What's up, everybody? Eric here from That's Wrestling. Thanks for tuning in with me for the AEW Dynamite review from March 4th, 2020. Before we get into it, just a few announcements. If you are interested in being a co-host for this show, you can shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. I'm looking for an AEW co-host, New Japan co-host, or if you want to do both, that is fine. Or if you just want to be a fill-in, if I don't have anybody that week or anything like that, shoot me a message, eric@thatswrestling.com. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can get this as a podcast on all your favorite podcast apps. Just search for That's Wrestling. Or if you are listening to this as a podcast and want to see this show live, head over to YouTube and subscribe and hit the notification bell on That's Wrestling's YouTube channel. The link is also in the show notes as well. And like I said, I do all these shows live, so you can come and hang out in the chat. And if you have a question or anything like that, you can throw that into the chat. So other than that, be sure to leave a review on iTunes or anything like that. And if you aren't already, be sure to subscribe and like this video. So let's get into it. We had AEW Dynamite for March 4th, 2020. It started off with a video recap of the Revolution pay-per-view, which, if you have not watched it, go watch it. Also, my review of that show is up as well, so you can check that out. But it was amazing, so you really should check it out if you have not watched it yet. So, first things first, the new AEW champion, Jon Moxley, is introduced and comes through the crowd. And did Excalibur even see the match at Revolution? Because he said that the cut over his eye, Jon Moxley's eye that is, was from Sammy running in with the title and hitting him with it. That happened at the end of the match. Sammy running in with the title and hitting with it. Moxley got busted open when he ran his head into the ring post very early on in the match. So, yeah, I don't know why Excalibur said that, because it wasn't even close to what actually happened. And if you saw the pay-per-view, you would know that was not what happened. There was actually a really big "You Deserve It" chant. So that chant has not left the fans' lips outside of AEW. Well, it is outside outside WWE. So, Moxley cuts relatively a very close promo to the promo he cut after Revolution, saying that the AEW Championship is a beautiful thing because the AEW letter, the letters AEW represent professional wrestling. Says the belt belongs to everyone who willed the company into existence, and that we brought pro wrestling back. And I have to agree, because I have been a huge fan of AEW so far. Says he'll defend the belt with his life, and no one has what it takes to even pry the belt from his cold, dead hands, but people are free to try. He knows it's not over between him and the inner circle, and he knows that the whole inner circle is going to be coming after him, and he has a message for them. I dare you. Jericho's music hits. He comes out with all of the inner circle, and he says he doesn't need the belt to be Le Champion. And he runs down Moxley a little bit, says that the Moxley era has started, but he thinks the Moxley era sucks ass. And then there's a big "You suck ass" chant from the crowd. The crowd actually had a pretty good number of chants this evening. Says that that the championship win was a lie and that Moxley was a cheater. He says he was training to face a man with one eye, and the fact that he could see makes him a cheater and a liar, which is a very preposterous thing to say. But I was really looking forward to all the whiny promos that Jericho was going to spit out there. He says that that Moxley has made the inner circle now a giant hit squad, and there is a loud BS chant from the crowd, and that they're going to rip through the AEW roster, and he doesn't care who stands in their way. Then he says that the main event of Moxley and Darby Allin versus Jericho and Sammy, that Moxley is not going to walk out under his on his own power, and says that he'll take a leave of absence of 30 days if he doesn't if he does walk out on his own. And then he says, you know what, let's make that 60 days. So this is kind of playing on that. A lot of people have been speculating of why Jericho may have lost the title was because, well, he is going to be touring with his band, and he was going to be away for a while during the summer. But so this might have been setting up, oh, he's taking the time off. So this kind of set up at the end of the night, oh, well, I guess Moxley's probably going to get one over on the Inner Circle, because Jericho is going to leave for 60 days anyways, because he's going to go tour with his band. But their first tour date isn't until almost the end of April, I think, in the middle of April, like the 16th or something. So that's 45 days away. So that would make no sense. So if you checked at the beginning of the show, you would know that 60 days really makes no sense, because they have some short tours just from the middle of April to the middle of May, and then they have from the middle of July to the middle of August. So it's just kind of like 30-day stints. And you know that 60 days would land actually in the middle of their tour. So if you look that up beforehand, you would know, oh, wait a minute, that's not right. And then Moxley says he's going to send him packing. So looking forward to not seeing Jericho for 60 days. Commentary team comes in, says that we are going to have Chucky T versus Pac, or I guess really they're calling him Chuck Taylor at this time, but I'm still going to call him Chucky T. Leva Bates versus Big Swole. Jake Hager versus QT Marshall, and then the main event that was just mentioned by Jericho and Sammy versus Moxley and Darby Allin. And then the match up next is SCU with Colt Cabana versus the Dark Order. So all four named members of the Dark Order versus the three guys from SCU plus Colt Cabana. Dark Order swarms Colt after he takes down Grayson really early in the match. SCU returns the favor a little while later. Frankie has this really nice wrecking ball drop kick. I don't think I've seen him do that, if at all, but it was really good. It was really nice. Dark Order pulls Christopher Daniels out of the ring, beats him up behind the ref's back for a bit. Christopher Daniels basically gets worked over for like 8 minutes straight, because they went into commercial and Christopher Daniels was already getting beat up by the Dark Order, and he gets beat up through the entire commercial, and then when they come back from commercial, they're still beating on him. Very interesting that the oldest guy in the match is taking all these bumps in the match. So, but I mean, I don't know. All of SCU and Colt Cabana, I think he's like 39. So that whole team is not very young anyways, but you figure they put somebody else in there other than Christopher Daniels to bump around for the Dark Order. But it is what it is. Excalibur mentioned that Dark Order is ranked number 1 on the tag team rankings right now. Also, JR seems to like to always mention Dick Grayson when mentioning Stu Grayson. So he said Stu, not Dick Grayson, or something along the lines of not Dick, but Stu Grayson. So he has a very a fondness of Dick Grayson, obviously, but he's trying to make sure that he does not say the incorrect name when mentioning Stu Grayson. So big breakdown ends up happening, and all 8 men are in the ring going crazy, and eventually SCU throws out all the Dark Order members except Uno throws out, I believe, Colt Cabana. I don't remember who exactly went. So Evil Uno thinks that, he's standing in the ring with all of his Dark Order guys. He turns around, and it's the 3 SCU guys, and they beat down Evil Uno for a little bit. And then it just more of a breakdown. Colt Cabana ends up hitting the Chicago Skyline and then the Superman pin for the win. If you've not seen the Chicago Skyline, basically Colt Cabana gets him up on his shoulders and then climbs the rope, and then he just drops them right across the top turnbuckle, and that is his finisher and his Superman pin. If you haven't seen it, you should probably look it up because it is pretty funny. And Uno grabs the mic afterwards and says, we're not supposed to go this way. The Exalted One will be furious when he arrives. Heads will roll. And he did use the pronoun of he, so that may be some sort of key, but who knows? Everybody, we have the speculation that it continues to go on. Matt Hardy, I might as well talk about him now. Matt Hardy had a Free the Delete video on his YouTube or Twitter or Facebook or all of them, and the Young Bucks showed up. If you watch Being the Elite, at the end of Being the Elite this week, after the pay-per-view, Matt gets a phone call and says, yeah, sure, we'll be there, and they have to make a detour. He's like, well, I guess we're not going home. We need to make a bit of a detour. And in Matt Hardy's video, the Young Bucks show up right at the end of it. So, not sure how this is going to play out. I am thinking, okay, so we have a few different options here for the Exalted One. I'm going to say that Matt Hardy is not going to be revealed as the Exalted One quickly if he is. If he is, he's going to be around for at least a few weeks, because why would the Young Bucks bring him in if they know he's the Exalted One or something like that? So he might play nice with them, and then eventually he turns and we find out that he's the Exalted One or something like that. And then, of course, we have the theories of it possibly being Brody Lee, former Luke Harper, if he is even going to use the Brody Lee name, which he used prior to WWE. Don't know. Also, I doubt it's going to be Lance Archer. That would kind of make no sense, just kind of given the way he carries himself. He definitely seems more like of a loner. That'd make way more sense if he was. So I still am going to call that none of those guys, Raven or Christopher Daniels, is going to be the Exalted One. I think it is somebody that we have not even thought about, and we're going to get we're going to get a surprise, I think, that we find out who the Exalted One is. But I have not a clue on who it is, and I'm kind of intrigued at this point. All right, so next up we have Leva Bates versus Big Swole. This is a nothing match. It was over in like a minute or like 90 seconds. Big Swole won with the Dirty Dancing, and that was basically it. There was nothing that happened to this match of note. And this was it for the women for the week. I don't know what to say about this. I have not seen much that gets me excited about either of these two. The match was pretty meh, and it looked like they had some botches in there as well. I think they're high on Big Swole for some reason, but I don't know why. So far, what I've seen, she either just annoys me or the match is just nothing. Like, nothing really happens, or there's just, yeah. So, again, we still have the major problem of trying to get this women's division together, and it is just not happening for whatever reason. After that, we have Cody comes out to do a promo. He says he doesn't even know if he wants to broach the subject of losing to MJF. He says that between him and MJF has gone from professional to personal, then to professional again. You know, he'd like to get that sweet win money and all that stuff. And then he says, but the thing that kind of irks him the most, and it would be fine with him if MJF could come out there right now and say to his face that he won fair and square. And of course, obviously he did not, because he did punch Cody with the Dynamite Diamond ring at the end of their match at Revolution. Then, who comes out? This was completely out of left field, and I did not expect this at all. It was Jake the Snake Roberts. He comes out and he grabs the mic from Cody. He says he hates to spoil the party, but he was just sick of listening to his bitching and crying, and that he didn't bitch and cry whenever he lost a match, and he just couldn't take it anymore. You know what happened? MJF whipped you like a dog, and he kicked your ass. And then he goes, but I am not here. I am here to slay you. I am not here to praise you. He calls him Caesar a couple times along those lines. He says he has a client that will bring the dark side to AEW. When he first said that, I'm like, is he the Exalted One? But given how the rest of the promo went, I don't think so. It just sounds like he actually is just going to have one person that he's going to manage. And for the most part, that was it. On his way out, he says, a wise man once told me, or something like that, that you should never turn your back on someone you respect or someone you're afraid of. Jake turns his back on Cody and walks out. So here we have a legend being used properly, which is amazing. I don't know why this doesn't happen more often. Hey, look at that. You're not making him look like an idiot, and you're not using him to make other people look like idiots, which is wonderful. I wish that would happen more often, but, we can only do so much. But here it is. So it looks like he is going to be running some sort of faction of his own. I don't know who the best person would be. I'm speculating that it's going to be Brody Lee that Jake the Snake is going to be the manager of. It would not make that much sense to be so for Lance Archer, and definitely not for Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy can take care of himself on the mic. So I think the one wild card, at least the people that haven't debuted that we know are going to be with AEW, is Brody Lee is probably the best guess, because his mic skills are not that great, or at least he hasn't been given the chance to be able to, show those off. So it could be using Jake to set this up and letting him go on his own. That was always kind of a weird thing, I thought, with Tully and Sean Spears, because Sean ends up doing a lot of the talking in the promo segment. So, and again, same with matching up Cody with Arn Anderson. There's no reason to give him a mouthpiece. So, interesting use of managers in AEW with not specifically needing them to be a mouthpiece, but to use a legend in a managerial role, which it makes sense. I mean, you look at other sports, you always have, head coaches of other sports have always been, players at the highest levels as well previously. So now they are coaching the next generation. I mean, that makes sense. You see it in baseball all the time. Almost like every coach in baseball was a former major league player before they became a coach. So, I mean, it would only make sense that you'd see, the big time professional wrestlers being managers or coaches to the next generation. I mean, it makes sense. So either they're just using all these managers as they like them, they like having these extra people to use in character development or in storylines, even though they can't wrestle anymore or anything like that. So interesting to see, because like I said, they've been stacking a lot of them in there. I mean, we have, for as far as managers go, we have Brandy, we have Bunny, even though she is a wrestler as well and can wrestle, and then Arn Anderson, Tully, and now Jake the Snake. DDP is in there once in a while in Cody's corner. So I don't know. We will see how this goes and see if they bring any other more legends in as kind of managerial roles in the future. That it could get interesting. Next up, we had Pac versus Chuck Taylor. Again, this was another nothing match. These just two matches, really, for the most part, like, all of the matches on this card, except for the last one, were pretty much nothing matches. So this definitely was not the best episode of AEW Dynamite, but it wasn't like horrible. Like, I didn't hate it or anything, but it definitely did not get to the level of the past, 4 or 5 weeks worth of TV. But one thing before I get into the next one, the one thing I do like about this is that it feels like the pay-per-view was really kind of like the culmination of these storylines, because now it seems like this episode really sets up a ton of storylines moving forward and not rehashing or continuation on most of the other storylines. So it seems like Cody is moving on. Moxley may be or may not be moving on. There was an MJF promo coming up in a minute. And then I think the one that may be continuing on is going to be Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Hangman Page. I mean, that makes sense that the Elite storyline is going to continue on, because that one didn't start until, a few weeks out anyways, in the middle of January, and now we are just in March. So it's only been about 6 weeks or so since that storyline kind of started. So it kind of makes sense that that's the case. I mean, the Jon Moxley Jericho storyline started in December, if not even a little bit before that, maybe at Full Gear. Maybe after Full Gear is kind of when that storyline started. We had Pac versus Chuck Taylor. Again, a nothing match. Nothing really happened. Orange Cassidy was on the outside. Pac and him did have a little bit of a stare down, but that was about it. After the match, Pac has the brutalizer on Chucky T and refused to let it go. So Trent gets in and he has a stare down with Pac, and then Orange Cassidy comes in, takes his glasses off, and they're about to kind of beat down on Pac a little bit, but the Lucha Bros come out and beat up Best Friends. So the Lucha Bros came out at the end of Orange Cassidy versus Pac at Revolution as well. Is there something going on here? Is what's going on? And is it just Lucha Bros have an issue with Best Friends? No. It seems Pac grabs the mic and says that they are the Death Triangle, and that now Pac and the Lucha Bros are a trios team. So there was speculation of another title coming to AEW. Is it going to be a trios title? Because we have a lot of trios in this now in AEW at this point. We have Death Triangle now. We have Best Friends, who are a trio. We have Jurassic Express, who are a trio. You could easily put together a trio from the Inner Circle. Who else do you get? Well, you have Matt and Nick plus Kenny Omega, so you could have the Elite as a threesome. You have QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes teaming up now, but if you brought Cody in as well, you'd have the Nightmare Family right there. So you could have a trios with those three. So it could be very interesting. I would not be surprised if instead of bringing in a singles championship, they bring in a trios championship next, because they have so many of them. So, and then you have Butcher, Blade, and MJF, because MJF has been working with them, and actually MJF will be tagging with Butcher and Blade against Jurassic Express next week. So that it could just be speculation at this point, but that's a lot of trios teams. So I would not be surprised if we see a trios tag championship. And I mean, that's a way to get a lot more wrestlers on shows. If you have a bunch of trios matches, I mean, they're always having trios matches anyways. I mean, so might as well make a championship out of it. And that way you can get more guys on the shows and not have to add matches or cut matches short or anything like that. So, I mean, I would not be opposed to trios. I'm a big fan of trios. There's been some really good trios matches in New Japan, and especially in like Lucha Underground. So we will see. Next up, we had QT Marshall versus Jake Hager. Again, pretty much a nothing match at this point. And just like the previous match, after the match, Hager wouldn't let the choke go. Dustin ends up running down, but then Santana and Ortiz beat him down. Cody comes down to help. He first takes out most of them, but then, of course, he gets beat up. And then Matt Jackson comes down. He tries to take out as much of the inner circle as possible, and then he eventually gets beaten down. And then Hangman Page slowly moseys his way down the ramp, beer in hand. He kind of like is swaying a little bit in his walk. It's not the straightest walk, and he's got his beer. He gets into the ring, and he sets his beer up on the ring post, and then he just runs wild. Like a switch kicks on, and he goes crazy. He hits a buckshot lariat on a couple of the guys, and then he grabs his beer off the ring post, flips off Matt Jackson, and then leaves the ring. And then I believe this was in commercial, but I was watching on Fight, and he grabbed so many beers from the crowd. He had to have like 7 or 8 of them in his arms. He's carrying them. He has like one beer can he's just holding in his teeth, and it was pretty funny. But with all the coronavirus going around, he should probably avoid taking beers and drinking them from the crowd. Yeah. At this point, you probably want to stop doing that, so you have maybe you get some plants to hand him some beers, so he's not drinking somebody's already half-drank beer. That would probably be a good idea. Then they announced next week we're going to have Cody versus Ortiz, and then we're going to have Death Triangle making a trios debut against Who Knows. Then we're going to have Jurassic Express versus Butcher Blade and MJF with the Bunny. And then they're going to give us the rules for the Blood and Guts match that will be happening on March 20-something. I think 25th. So looking forward to that. See what that is. I'm assuming it's going to be roughly the same rules as your regular War Games. Maybe they might make it a little more exciting and make it an elimination match instead of a 1 fall to a finish. Because if you're going to have like 5-on-5 or something, 1 fall to a finish is kind of lame. I would like to much more see an elimination match. So maybe they'll go reverse and they'll have, instead of entering one at a time at a given interval, they'll just start all of them in the ring and then it's elimination the other direction. I think that would make for a more exciting match, but we will see how it goes. Then next we have Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara versus Jon Moxley and Darby Allin. I looked at the clock when this match was about to start. I'm like, there's like 40 minutes left in the show. What are they going to be doing? Well, we figure that out pretty quick. Moxley is attacked by 3 masked men while he's making his way to the ring. They drag him out into the concourse and are beating on him. They reveal themselves to be Hager, Santana, and Ortiz. They just beat Moxley on the concourse. They run him into the wall. They hit him with trash cans. And then Moxley will kind of like fire up and try to get back out and try to take them on, and then they beat him down again, and he fires up again, and then eventually Jake Hager chokes him out and leaves him lying in the concourse. The doctor comes over and attends to Moxley, and then Darby Allin decides to go it alone as a handicap match. Kind of what was a little bit stupid about this is they were showing this all up on the screen, and Darby is just standing there in the ring. So I think they could have played it off a little better. Tony did say that that Allin had been jumped because he was like trying to cover it, but of course whoever was in the truck and producing did not hear him say that line or did it register, and they switched camera angles right after that to show no, he was perfectly fine and just watching the TV or watching the screen like everybody else, and they cut to Chris Jericho laughing in the ring. Would have made way more sense if Darby Allin had maybe tried to leave the ring or tried to get into the crowd and then was cut off by Jericho and Sammy. That would have made way more sense and would give him a reason not to be able to go help Moxley in the back while he's getting beat up for like 5+ minutes. So anyways, Darby decides to go it alone as a handicap match. Allin handles Jericho and Guevara for a bit until Sammy hits this massive running knee strike. His running knee strike looks really good. He does it a little differently than Kenny does the V trigger. So Kenny's V trigger is more of an upswing type of knee, and whereas Sammy is kind of already flying in a forward motion with his knee. So it's a really nice looking, and he makes it look really good. Eventually the rest of the inner circle makes their way out to the ring since Moxley is left unconscious in the concourse. Allin gets worked over by the inner circle for a long time. There's a good old F you Sammy chant as he is beating up on Moxley. So if you were wondering, for those who are watching on TNT, why your sound kept ducking out during that match, it was because they were chanting F you Sammy. Darby fires up and takes out Jericho for a minute with a massive dive, but more beating down Darby until he gets his knees up on a Jericho moonsault. Darby Allin at one point is crawling over to his corner, but of course Moxley is not there to tag him to get tagged. So Darby pulls himself up on the turnbuckle, not like so he's leaning against it, on his back's on the turnbuckle, and he just kind of straightens up and just claps his hands over his head. The ref actually does that motion when somebody gets a tag. So basically Darby has tagged himself in. He fire ups, he runs wild, he hits a code red on Sammy for a 2 count. Of course, Tony yelled out that it was a destroyer, but it was not. It was a code red. The arms are on the top of the legs on the landing for a destroyer. Code red is under the legs. He hits a flip over stunner on Sammy, hits the coffin drop. 1, 2. Jericho ends up breaking up the pin, but Darby sees him coming, so he moves out of the way at the last second, and Jericho ends up hitting Sammy. Darby ends up going for a dive on Jericho on the outside, but Jericho hits him with the Judas effect while in mid-air. So he's knocked out. Jericho rolls Allin back into the ring. Sammy pins him for the win. So that is the end of that match. And Allin has taken on and lost on a handicap match. Moxley's nowhere to be seen until Moxley comes down the ramp with a chair, clears the ring of the inner circle. Jericho had run for the hills as soon as Moxley made it that way. But of course, then while Jericho is staring at Moxley gets hit from behind by Jake Hager, and then eventually they beat him up going up the ramp, and then they powerbomb Moxley off the stage through an equipment table on the floor, and they all flip him off. So there's a big, giant collective flip-off of Moxley while he's laid out through the tables. And that was the end of the show. So it was not the best show of AEW, but it was not horrible. I would definitely take this over any Raw or SmackDown in the past 3 years. So there's that. So I think for the most part, this episode, they were really setting up all the upcoming storylines. Like I said, it feels like the pay-per-views are really kind of blow-offs, or at least Revolution definitely was, blow-offs to feuds, and they're moving on to new stories. So it makes sense that this episode was very story-heavy, and that the three of the matches in the middle of the card, we had Leva Bates, Big Swole, then we had Pac, Chuck Taylor, and QT Marshall versus Jake Hager. I mean, those 3 matches were basically nothing matches. So I would have been a little disappointed if I was at this show, because there was not that much good wrestling. I also heard the report of what they did on AEW Dark as well. Did not sound like the matches over there were that great either. So I guess it is what it is. Of course, Kenny Omega was not there. And they say he's recovering from the match. I think he broke a finger during that match at Revolution. And also, Nick Jackson wasn't there. I believe they said, I don't think they might have said why he was out, but the real reason is that his wife is about to give birth any minute. So that is why he was not there. So that kind of makes sense. And that's why Matt was there, because his wife is not about to give birth. So there we go. Looking forward to next week. So next week, what did I say earlier? We have Cody versus Santana, which should be, versus Ortiz. That should actually be a really fun match, I think. And then Death Triangle against whoever. So we're going to have a massive trios. I'm looking for Lucha Bros plus Pac. Yeah, sign me up for any match that they do, because that's going to be crazy. And then, of course, another trios match of Jurassic Express versus Butcher Blade and MJF. So 3 decent matches that they've announced for next week, and then plus we will get the stipulation on what the Blood and Guts match is going to be. I'm curious how that's going to work. I wonder if it's going to end up being the Inner Circle versus some sort of faction that Moxley manages to put together. That would make the most sense. But really, I don't know at this point, because the biggest faction is obviously the Inner Circle, and then the next biggest would be the Elite. There's 5 technically in the Elite if Adam Page is included. So you could have the Elite versus the Inner Circle, but I don't know how you would set that up right now, because none of the Elite are feuding with anybody in the Inner Circle. So I don't know how that would work out. Oh, I guess Cody is. Well, actually, never mind. Cody is feuding with the Inner Circle, kind of ancillary a little bit. He is going to be taking on Ortiz here, because Ortiz hit him in the back with a chair during that beatdown. And then, we also have Dustin, but he is not part of the Elite. So I don't know. We will see. I am very curious how this will go. And so we'll have to stay tuned to next week. But other than that, I don't really have any major complaints, other than the wrestling wasn't that great on this show. But there wasn't anything super, super bad. But of course, as it has to go every single week, they did not mention AEW Dark once on this show. So there's always that. So, easy fix. Hey, you have a show on YouTube that storylines advance on. You should probably promote it. All right. So that's all I have for this week. Be sure to like and subscribe, comment, question, feedback down below, or you can shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. If you'd like to be a co-host for this show for either AEW, New Japan, or both, or you just want to be a fill-in if someone is not available, please shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. Be sure to leave a review over on iTunes. That would really help out. And I believe that is it. So thanks for listening or watching, and I'll see you guys next time on That's Wrestling. See you guys.